The Reorganized National Government was the name of the collaborationist government established in the Republic of China from 1940 to 1945. It was led by the former Kuomintang Party member Wang Jingwei. Wang Jingwei was the leftist leader of the Kuomintang faction called the Reorganizationists, who was often at odds with Chiang Kai-shek. After the fall of the capital city Nanjing to the Japanese army, the nationalist government went into exile to Chongqing. On 30 March 1940, defectors under the tutelage of the Japanese army established a collaborationist government and claimed to be the legitimate representative of the Republic of China. The Reorganized National Government was formed out of previous collaborationist governments that existed in northern and central China, including the reformed government of the Republic of China based in eastern China, the Provisional Government of the Republic of China in northern China, and later on the Mengjiang government in Inner Mongolia, though in reality northern China and Inner Mongolia stayed relatively free of its influence. Although using the same state symbols and name of the Republic, it enjoyed only international recognition by the anti-Kuomintang Pact countries. The exiled nationalist government continued to be recognized by the rest of the world as the only legitimate representative. The Republic of China, led by the Reorganized National Government, was effectively one of several Asian puppet states under Japanese control during the Second Sino-Japanese War, and it was meant to rival the legitimacy of the nationalist government. The Reorganized National Government declared war on the Allies on 9 January 1943. It was disbanded following the defeat of the Japanese military and the end of the war in August 1945. Etymology. The regime is informally also known as the Nanjing Nationalist Government, the Nanjing Regime, or by its leader Wang Jingwei regime. Other names used are the Republic of China Nanjing, China Nanjing, or New China. Political boundaries. In theory, the reorganized government controlled all of China with the exception of Manchukuo, which it recognized as an independent state. In actuality, the reorganized government controlled only Jiangsu, Anhui, and the north sector of Zhejiang, all being Japanese-controlled territories after 1937. Therefore, the reorganized government's actual borders changed as the Japanese gained territory in the war. During the December 1941 Japanese offensive, the reorganized government extended control over Hunan, Hubei, and parts of Jiangxi province. The port of Shanghai and the towns of Hankou and Wuchang were also under control of the reformed government after 1940. The Japanese-controlled provinces of Shandong and Hubei were theoretically part of this political entity, although were actually administered by the commander of the Japanese North Front, under a separate Japanese-controlled government based in Beijing. Like the Northern Front, the southern sectors had their own Japanese military commander and government based in Guangzhou. Each front acted as its own military unit with its own political and economic administration as well as its own Japanese military commander. Jiangsu, 41,818 square miles, capital. Zhenjiang. Anhui, 51,888 square miles, capital. Anqing, Zhejiang, 39,780 square miles, capital. Hangzhou. According to other sources, total extension of territory during 1940 period was 1,264,000 square kilometers. During the war, the Imperial Japanese Army committed numerous atrocities in areas controlled by the reorganized government, including so-called mopping up operations to frighten the populace. General Toshizo Nishio, the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Japanese Army's expeditionary forces in mainland China, was subsequently replaced by General Yasuji Okamura. On 9 September 1945, following Japan's defeat in World War II, the Japanese forces in the area surrendered to General He Yingcha of Chiang Kai-shek's National Revolutionary Army. Government, economy, education and everyday life. Both were under the president and head of state Wang Jingwei. Real political power remained with the commander of the Japanese Army, Central Chinese Front, and Japanese political entities formed by the Japanese councillors. The Japanese also set up various local nationalist parties and movements to support its cause. After obtaining Japanese approval to establish a national government, Wang Jingwei ordered the 6th Kuomintang Representative Congress to establish this government in Nanjing. The dedication occurred in the conference hall, and both the Blue Sky White Sun Red Earth national flag and the Blue Sky White Sun Nationalist Party flag were unveiled, flanking a large portrait of Sun Yat-sen. On the day the new government was formed, and just before the session of the Central Political Conference began, Wang visited Sun's tomb in Nanjing's Purple Mountain in an attempt to establish the legitimacy of his power as Sun's successor. Wang had been a high-level official of the nationalist government and, as a confidant to Sun, had transcribed Sun's last will, the Zhongli's Testament, to discredit the legitimacy of the Chongqing government. Wang adopted Sun's flag in the hope that it would establish him as the rightful successor to Sun and bring the government back to Nanjing. The Nanjing government in the northern Chinese areas, the Beijing administration, was under the commander-in-chief of the Japanese North China Front, until the Yellow River area fell inside the sphere of influence of the Central Chinese Front. During this same period, the area from Middle Zhejiang to Canton was administered by the South Chinese Front. These small, largely independent fiefdoms had local money and local leaders, and frequently squabbled. Wang Jingwei traveled to Tokyo in 1941 for meetings with his Japanese overseers. In Tokyo, the Nanjing government minister and vice president Zhou Fohai commented to the Asahi Shimbun that the Japanese establishment was making little progress in the Nanjing area. This quote provoked anger from Kumataro Honda, the Japanese ambassador and consul in Nanjing. Zhou Fohai petitioned for total control of China's central provinces by the national government. In response, Imperial Japanese Army Lieutenant General Taiichi Suzuki was ordered to provide military guidance to Wang Jingwei's new regime at Nanking, and so became part of the real power that lay behind Wang's rule. With the permission of the Japanese Army, a common monopolistic economic policy was applied, to the benefit of Japanese zaibatsu and local representatives. Though these companies were supposedly treated the same as local Chinese companies by the government, the president of the Yuan legislature in Nanjing, Chen Gongbo, complained that this wasn't true to the Kaizo Japanese Review. The Nanjing nationalist government of the Republic of China also featured its own embassy in Yokohama, Japan. Notable people: local administration, Liang Hongji, President and head of state in the initial period; Wang Jingwei, President and head of state; Chen Gongbo, President and head of state after the death of Wang, also President of the Legislative Yuan and Mayor of the Shanghai occupied sector; Zhou Fohai, Vice President and Finance Minister in the Executive Yuan; Jiang Kanghu, Chief of the Education Yuan; Kumataro Honda, Japanese civil and political counselor of the local government and Japanese ambassador in Nanjing; Nobuyuki Abe, Japanese political advisor in the Chinese administration; Taiichi Suzuki, military and political advisor in the Chinese administration; Bao Wenyu, Minister of Military Affairs; Ren Yuandao, Naval Minister; Xiao Shuxuan, General Chief of Staff; Yang Kui, Minister of Military Training; Li Shik, head of No. 76, the Wang Jingwei regime's secret service stationed in No. 76 Jesfield Road, Shanghai; Kaoru Nori, Japanese nationalist, merchant, and commercial advisor in the Chinese area; Chu Minyi, national ambassador in Yokohama, Japan; Tao Liang, notable Chinese landowner and Chinese government official; Chao Kung, purported Buddhist leader; foreign representatives and diplomatic personnel; Kumataro Honda, Japanese ambassador and representative. Dr. Ernst Werman, German ambassador. Economy. The local economy was administered primarily for the Japanese Army of the Central Front. Military planners installed an occupation economy with wartime money, and a Chinese central bank with supposedly Chinese entities. But all were administered by Japanese councillors and the Japanese army in the area. Chinese under the regime had greater access to coveted wartime luxuries, and the Japanese enjoyed things like matches, rice, tea, coffee, cigars, foods and alcoholic drinks, all of which were scarce in Japan proper. Additional entertainment, such as brothels, casinos and bars, were managed by the Japanese and local functionaries for the military. The purpose of this control was allegedly to impede the monetary depreciation of the yen, so as to maintain the strength of the Japanese currency on the continent. In the Japanese-occupied territories, the prices of basic necessities rose substantially. In Shanghai of 1941, they increased 11-fold. Similar inflation occurred in Manchukuo, despite heavily centralized economic control by the Japanese. Education was similar across all the Japanese-occupied territories. The strategy was to create a workforce suited for the factories and mines, and for manual labor. The Japanese also attempted to introduce their culture and dress to the Chinese. Complaints and agitation, as in Manchukuo, were raised and called for more meaningful Chinese educational development. Shinto temples and similar cultural centers were built in order to instill Japanese culture and values. These activities came to a halt at the end of the war. Daily life was often difficult in the Nanjing nationalist government-controlled Republic of China, and grew increasingly so as the war turned against Japan. Local residents resorted to the black market in order to obtain needed items or to influence the ruling establishment. The Japanese Kampitai, Japanese Toko, collaborationist Chinese police, and Chinese citizens in the service of the Japanese, all worked to censor information, monitored any opposition, and tortured enemies and dissenters. A native secret agency, the Tetsu, was created with Japanese army advisors. The Japanese also established prisoner of war detention centers, concentration camps, and kamikaze training centers to indoctrinate pilots as members of the Navy's Shanghai Kokutai and Nakajima Kugasho L3Y1/2 of Tsingtao Base Squadron, detached in Tsingtao as part of Shinohome Kantei among Army SA-2 Chatai of 85th Hiko Sentai and 9 Stone Sentai, both units based in Shanghai and Nanjing area. Media controlled the Nanjing government organized a Bureau of Newspapers Management under the Department of Propaganda in October 1940. 4 press agencies were created in 1941, though all were formally controlled by and censored by the Department of Propaganda. The population was probably close to the 1,937-38 figures of the Interior Affairs Ministry, with no account taken of the outer regions or areas occupied by later advances. Jiangsu, 15,804,623. Anhui, 23,354,188. Zhejiang, 21,230,749. The populations of the major cities were: Nanjing, 1,100,000; Shanghai, 3,703,430; Suzhou, 576,000; Hangzhou, 389,000; Shaoxing, 250,000; Ningbo, 250,000; Hankou, 804,526. Other population estimates are as follows: Shanghai, 3,500,000; Hankou, 778,000. Other sources during 1940 reported that the total number of inhabitants rose to 182 million. National defense. The Japanese army organized a local army, supposedly to defend the Nanjing regime-controlled China. In reality, it served as a second line of offense and internal security as part of the Second Sino-Japanese War. A collaborationist air force renamed the National Government of China Air Force in 1940 was created, and provided gliders for training purposes. It was later equipping with Nakajima Ki-34 Thora for military activities and troop transport, Nakajima Ki-27B Nate, Takakawa Ki-55 Ida for training, Takakawa Ki-9 Spruce for reconnaissance and training, and Nakajima Ki-43 Iowa Hayabusa Oscar for defense. For the collaborationist army, Japan provided Type 94 TK light tanks, Type 38 Meiji carbines, German Stahlhelm helmets, cannons, mortars, and light AA cannons, Arisaka rifles, Type 99 rifles and Nambu pistols. For the collaborationist navy, the IJN provided some captured warships: gunboat Suma, gunboat Tatara, gunboat Karatsu, gunboat Narumi, gunboat Okitsu, gunboat Nanyo, patrol boat PB-102, patrol boat PB-101, light cruiser Isojima, light cruiser Yasojima. The regime also had a regular police force under Japanese control. The local politicians and media consistently provided pro-Japanese propaganda, praising the heroic efforts of the imperial troops, and argued for national defense against communism and Western interests. Chiang Kai-shek's forces captured numerous members of Wang Qingbai's army during military engagements. Enemy prisoners of low rank were persuaded to renege and fight alongside anti-Japanese forces, but high-ranking prisoners were executed. Leaders of the military included Minister of Military Affairs Bao Wenyu, Minister of Navy Ren Yuandao, General Chief of Staff Yang Kui, Minister of Military Training Seo Shuxuan. Japanese methods of recruiting during the conflicts in central China. The Japanese utilized several methods to recruit Chinese volunteers. Japanese sympathizers like Nanjing's pro-Japanese governor, or major local landowners like Taoliang, were used to recruit local peasants in return for money or food. The Japanese recruited 5,000 volunteers in the Anhui area for the local Nanjing army. Japanese forces and the reformed Nanjing government used slogans like "Drop your weapons" and "Take the plow," oppose the communist bandits, or oppose corrupt government and support the reformed Nanjing government, to dissuade guerrilla attacks and buttress its support. The Japanese used various methods for subjugating the local populace. Initially, fear was used to maintain order, but this approach was altered following appraisals by Japanese military ideologists. In 1939, the Japanese army attempted some populist policies, including dividing the property of major landowners into small holdings, and allocating them to local peasants, providing the Chinese with medical services, including vaccination against cholera, typhus, and varicella, and treatments for other diseases, ordering Japanese soldiers not to violate women or laws, dropping leaflets from aeroplanes, offering rewards for information, the handing over weapons, or other actions beneficial to the Japanese cause. Money and food were often incentives used, and dispersal of candy, food and toys to children. Buddhist leaders inside the occupied Chinese territories were also forced to give public speeches and persuade people of the virtues of a Chinese alliance with Japan, including advocating the breaking off of all relations with Western powers and ideas. In 1938, a manifesto was launched in Shanghai, reminding the populace the Japanese alliance's track record in maintaining moral supremacy, as compared to the often fractious nature of the previous Republican control, and also accusing Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek of treason for maintaining the Western alliance. In support of such efforts, in 1941 Wang Jingwei proposed the Kangxiang Plan to be applied along the lower course of the Yangtze River. A Kangxiang Plan committee was formed with himself as chairman, and Zhou Fohai and Chen Gongbo. Li Shik was made the committee's secretary. Beginning in July 1941, Wang maintained that any areas to which the plan was applied would convert into model areas of peace, anti-communism, and rebuilders of the country. It was not a success.